Hi, my name is Danielle Horton,
And I'm Jessica Loper.
and we're here to talk to you about all these different changes that are happening with the USGBC's LEED certification system. We're going to talk about Dynamic Plaque, version 2009, version 4, all those things that's happening. One of the key things is a upcoming deadline.
That's right. Just remember October 31, 2016 is a hard deadline for the USGBC. If you'd like to submit an application into your particular LEED rating system, you need to do it within that time period just to register, and that way you have a choice between the various versions out there.
Between 2009 and before, and then you can at least grandfather, which we recommend.
Mm-hmm.
Just to very briefly in terms of what's happening with the market. So I'm on the USBC Advisory Council on Facility Management Operations, and one of the things that where we see where the market's heading is that LEED has and USBC have had tremendous success in transforming the market, but we're really scratching the surface. We're still reaching the 1%, the large properties that have kind of more resources to focus on investing LEED certification, because it's still very expensive and time consuming. So they're really the changes with Dynamic Plaque, and kind of where the market's going. We're going towards more real-time data, more things being connected, sharing of data, so that we can really transform the market by addressing our 98% stock of existing buildings. So I feel like this changes with Dynamic Plaque is really going to help with that, because we're focusing now on 5 key performance indicators: energy, water, waste, indoor quality, transportation, feedback from tenants, surveys. So it's going to be a lot more streamlined. We are managing over 2,000 properties in national and international portfolios, and we're already tracking a lot of that data already for reporting for many different reasons. So we basically Dynamic Plaque can tap into those systems to Energy Star Portfolio Manager and get energy, water, and now can even get waste from Energy Star Portfolio Manager, so that the whole process is more streamlined. The other thing is we've done some assessments between the current version, recertification with version 2009, and recertification of Dynamic Plaque. And not only is it a lot more streamlined, but it's also a lot cheaper. Usually, sometimes even half the cost, which is really going to help get a lot more buildings through the system. And Jessica has a lot of experience actually implementing Dynamic Plaque. Can you share some of your best practices with it?
Absolutely. So there is one thing to note is there are some differences, but from the typical LEED route and the LEED Dynamic Plaque route. One would be the transportation survey and occupant comfort survey. That would be an annual basis, versus if you go through the LEED for existing buildings, that can be up to one time every 5 years. So that is something that's different. However, based on the difference from that, you have a full year to be able to implement the transportation. You need to have 25% of your tenants take this survey, and so the idea is you have a whole year to go through it. You have based on seasonality to see how people are transporting to work and how they're feeling in their building. And so by doing, think about if you have a lobby event, if you have some kind of typical event,
social or tenant events.
Yeah, and then that way you can have simultaneously as they're getting out of the lobby or coming in, you can say, hey, can you just tell me how did you get to work today, and what's your overall comfort level? And it's a very quick, much more streamlined way of going through that process for the audit process compared to your traditional LEED route.
Yeah. Just reminder too, it's now Dynamic Plaque is going to be an annual certification. Even though it's an annual certification, you have to submit every year, just like Energy Star. It's still a lot cheaper, and it's really hard to keep track of 5 years worth of data to submit every 5 years. So all our buildings that have signed up for it, you have the 30-day free trial to test it out, we're having great results. They love it. Nobody so far wants to go back to it. And
now that Energy Star is allowing waste in their platform, you can streamline the energy, water, and waste on a monthly basis. It goes straight into LEED Dynamic Plaque. You don't have to do anything.
Right.
So
I
helps a lot.
Right. I personally had some concerns with on dynamic plaque, they're not using Energy Star scores. So we did a lot of different pilots to see how the buildings would score on the energy side, considering that they're not using Energy Star scores. But we found it's not one size fits all solution. But most buildings were able to maintain their ratings. Some dropped, some increased, but for the most part, if they were gold before, you can still get gold with dynamic plaque.
That's right.
So I feel like, our main takeaway is that we highly recommend you testing it out and going the dynamic plaque route. It's going to be a lot more streamlined. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be a lot better in terms to get more buildings through the system, help USBC achieve their market transformation goals. And even for owners, there's so many benefits. It's like a proven tool that you can communicate your efforts to tenants and different stakeholders that you are a sustainable property, and now you can do that in a much easier way. So the other thing we want to talk about is also there's also V4 coming up. So there's all of these like moving things. We're helping our property teams understand those differences between LEED 2009, V4, dynamic plaque. Jessica, can you talk a little bit about V4?
So every time they transition into a new version, there is going to be some adjustments. They're reevaluating what is important in the market, and so they're going to judge the point system based on that. So if you have, say, the transportation, that's a very important one. There's also the Energy Star. If you have a certain amount of points, they're actually increasing the score for that. So
like you need a minimum 75 score on V4 versus 2009 is it was 69. So they're making more stringent.
Yeah. But it's still going to be 100 points versus 100 points. It's not changing that. So they're just moving those point systems in various categories. They're increasing the number of categories, trying to sort of focus a little bit more on specific categories that they think are important. And it really, at this point, there will be stringent requirements. If they see that, your percentage of green cleaning is a certain amount, they have increased it. So you need to make sure that you're purchasing more green cleaning products than before. And so there's going to be those changes there.
Right. So, just one thing to keep in mind too, on our different comparison assessments between version 2009 and V4, it was also not a one size fits all. So the properties that were CBD and then good alternative transportation did better on V4 because you get more points on that. But some properties is scored lower because it is more stringent. One thing we are recommending is at least make sure you register with 2009 because, if you haven't done those comparison analysis, it gives you the option to stay with the less stringent current version if you haven't figured out. It's just this year there's that third layer of also like the USBC rolling out dynamic plaque. So there's all these moving parts that it's making hard for properties to navigate to all of that. But I'd say, register with 2009 and then try out the LEED dynamic plaque because it's just a lot easier, it's a lot more streamlined, cheaper.
30-day free trial, that doesn't hurt anything. You still can have the registration. It's only $900 if you are a member with USGBC. You can do that, and then that way you have the choice to choose which option would be best. You do your gap analysis, you see which one is better for you, and then that way you can continue on.
The other thing we wanted to mention is that you can also pursue initial certification through dynamic plaque. It's not just for recertification. So
That's right.
you can do that.
And with the LEED dynamic plaque, doing the initial route, you still are going to do the prerequisites like you would with your typical traditional route. And then there's 10 base points that you can choose and use that. And it's still going to be half the price than it typically would be if you went through the traditional route with the USGBC fees.
Yeah, so you still have to do some of the like prereqs that are challenging, a little more expensive, but it's still not gonna be as expensive if you're doing the traditional route. So you can do that information is going to be more readily available, but you can do initial certifications as well, not just the recertifications with dynamic plaque.
And that's just a one-time event. You would have that cost, and then it would go back to your typical recertification where it would be on an annual basis, and you wouldn't have to provide any other additional documents based on those base points. It would just be your typical 5 credit categories that we've discussed before.
Right, the ongoing tracking ones. You hope that this was helpful. We also have a blog post where we're posting additional resources to help you navigate through this process. But feel free to also contact our team. We're going to have our website. You can look at verdani.com or info@verdani.com to contact our team if you need any type of support with helping you navigate through the system. I hope you grandfather buildings of 2009, but also give it a shot at LEED Dynamic Plaque because it's really going to be a game changer for the industry. Thank you.
Thank you.